They say you remember things differently when you weren't supposed to be there. Like your brain hangs onto details harder, out of guilt, maybe, or curiosity. Either way, I still remember the way she said it. Let's just say this never happened. Soft, almost amused, not ashamed. Like she knew I wouldn't be able to forget, and didn't mind if I did. It started with a tire rotation. Nothing dramatic. I was behind the counter at my uncle's auto shop, still sweating from wrestling a rusty lug nut off a Jeep that morning. She walked in around 3:15, cool air curling in around her ankles. A tiny gust before the door clicked shut. Claire. Technically, Aunt Claire. Aunt by marriage. Not that we ever said that out loud. She wasn't blood. Didn't grow up with her. My uncle married her when I was 18 and she was already grown. Already kind of intimidating. And she wasn't supposed to be there. Thought you went back to Chicago? I said, wiping my hands on a rag that was already too dirty to be useful. She glanced around the place like it was the first time she'd seen it, even though she must have been here dozens of times. Just in town for a few days. Saw your truck outside. Her voice was casual, but her eyes sharp, like she was trying not to read too much into the way I paused before answering. Need something fixed? I asked. She smiled a little.
No.
Just stalling. There was a weird quiet after she said that. The shop's radio was on low in the background, some AM talk show crackling about summer traffic. I could hear the ticking of the overhead clock. She walked closer to the counter, set down her keys. Painted nails. Wedding ring still on, I noticed. Not that I was looking for it. I guess I'm killing time, she added. My hotel room's too clean. I laughed too fast. Must be nice. She didn't laugh back, just looked at me for a second longer than people usually do. Not in a weird way, just like she was noticing something I hadn't said. That was always how she looked at you. Like she already knew where your sentence would end. I don't know what I expected next, but not what happened. She pulled a paper coffee cup from her tote, still steaming slightly, and slid it across the counter. Still drink it black? I blinked. You remembered that? She shrugged one shoulder, not flirtatious, just self-possessed. I remember things. You used to drink it like it was a dare. I picked up the cup. Her hand lingered just a beat too long on the counter before she pulled it away. Something tightened in my throat, and I didn't know why. We talked for a few more minutes. Nothing important. She teased me about still living in town. I asked her if Chicago was better. She said not really. Then she checked her phone and said she had to go. That's when she said it. Right before walking out. She leaned just slightly over the counter. Not close, but close enough for her perfume to catch the air between us, and said, let's just say this never happened.
No wink. No smirk.
Just calm. Decided. Then she was gone. She came back 3 days later. Said her rental car was making a noise. It wasn't. I checked it anyway. Popped the hood, kicked the tires, made it look convincing. She sat on the beat-up leather chair in the back office while I leaned under the car just to feel like I was doing something. The sun was low enough to paint orange slants across the concrete floor, and the buzz of the old soda machine in the corner filled most of the silence. You didn't have to, I said from under the car. Bring it in, I know, she said. It just rattles when I drive fast. I pulled myself up slowly and met her eyes. You drive fast now? She smiled, tired, not playful. Only when I want to forget where I'm going. She looked away right after she said it, like she wished she hadn't. That was the thing with Claire. She never said much, but when she did, it left a mark. Like she was handing you a thread and daring you to pull. I sat on the little wheeled stool across from her. She was picking at the corner of a manila envelope she'd brought in with her. Nails still neat, but chipped at the edges. Gold ring glinting in the light. You look tired, I said before I could stop myself. She didn't answer at first. Just tilted her head like she wasn't sure if it was a compliment or concern. Guess I am. she finally said quietly. No one really asks me that anymore. There was a pause. I shifted my weight, suddenly hyper-aware of how small the room was, how the walls held heat and memory and something else I couldn't name. I looked down, then at her hands. She was still fidgeting with the envelope, left thumb circling the corner again and again, like it might open on its own. She caught me watching and froze. Another pause. Longer. You okay? I asked, careful with the tone. She nodded too fast. Yeah, just tired, like you said. I almost asked why, but didn't. Instead, I leaned back on my palms and said, you don't have to talk if you don't want to. I'm good at just sitting. Her mouth twitched like she wanted to smile, but it got caught on something. Outside, a truck rumbled by. Neither of us moved. And then, just for a second, she looked at me, not with curiosity, not with family familiarity, something else, like she was remembering something, or almost saying it. Her eyes held mine longer than they should have. Then she dropped them to her lap. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but didn't, and that silence felt louder than words. The rain started just before closing. Real rain, the kind that came down in sheets and made the lights outside blur like smudged paint. We'd stayed late. She said she wanted to look at old invoices for tax stuff she was sorting. I offered to help, mostly to see if she'd say no. She didn't. Now we were both sitting on upturned crates, dinner balanced in our laps. Cheap takeout, egg rolls soggy from the steam. The shop smelled like grease, soy sauce, and the lavender hand lotion she kept reapplying without realizing it. You always stay this late? She asked. Only when someone makes up an excuse to stay. She looked at me, didn't smile, just blinked, slow, like she caught what I meant but didn't want to name it. There was music playing faintly from my phone, some lo-fi instrumental playlist. Nothing romantic, but somehow even the soft beat between us felt loaded. She tucked a piece of hair behind her ear. It was damp from the walk-in. I noticed how her collar was still speckled from the rain, how she hadn't touched her fortune cookie, how the skin at her throat moved when she swallowed without speaking. I wanted to say something, anything. I used to think you hated me, I said instead. Back then. She glanced up. I didn't. You were just quiet, distant. Her eyes softened, but her shoulders didn't. I had a lot on my plate, marrying into a family I didn't belong to, trying to be likable without being weak. That whole dance. She said it flat, without bitterness. But her voice thinned a little at the end, like it had been a long-held breath. You were never weak, I said. Just hard to read. She laughed once, under her breath. That's worse. I looked down at her hands again, no rings this time, just bare fingers resting near the edge of her box, twitching slightly when I said nothing more. I didn't realize how close we were until I leaned forward to toss my napkin and our knees bumped. Just a brush. She didn't move. Outside, thunder rolled soft but long, like it didn't want to interrupt. Inside, something settled in the air, heavy, expectant. I keep thinking, I said quietly, that there's something you're not saying. She looked at me, really looked, a kind of gaze that didn't blink. Her lips parted like she might speak. Her hand shifted an inch closer to mine. And then her phone lit up, buzzing against the bench. Matt, 2 missed calls, her husband. She saw it. So did I. The silence snapped in half. My hand was halfway to hers when she said, "You should go now." And I did. But only my body left that room. She came by again without calling. I heard the door chime and thought it was a parts delivery, but when I looked up, it was just her, standing in the doorway like she wasn't sure if she'd come in or turn back. The air still smelled like last night's rain. The floor hadn't dried completely. She didn't say hi right away, and I didn't either. I wiped my hands and stepped out from under the lifted sedan. "You left your scarf," I said, holding it up like that's why she came. She took it carefully, looked at it like it was something delicate, not just cotton. Thanks. We stood there, both of us half turned toward the exit, half toward each other. You okay? I asked, the same way you'd ask someone who wouldn't tell you if they weren't. She exhaled. Can I just sit for a second? I nodded and gestured toward the same crate she always sat on. She dropped onto it like her body remembered it. For a while we didn't talk. The shop was still and strange, too quiet for this hour. I grabbed an old thermos and poured what was left of the coffee. It was cold. I gave it to her anyway. She didn't mind. Then she said it. Not loudly. Not with drama. Just like she was finally too tired to hold it in. What are we doing? I froze. The question was bare. Like she hadn't planned it. Like it slipped out before she could wrap it in anything safer. I sat down across from her, elbows on my knees. I didn't try to fill the silence. Not yet. We're talking, I said eventually. Her eyes flicked to mine.
No.
We're not. Another pause. She rubbed her thumb along the edge of the scarf, knotted it tighter around her hand like she needed it to stay grounded. I don't even know why I keep coming here, she whispered. It's not about the car. And it's not about you. Or maybe it is. I don't know. Her voice cracked on no barely, but I caught it. I leaned forward. You don't have to explain. But I do. She shook her head, more at herself than me. You're young. This is just attention. I'm not stupid. I didn't say anything. She looked up slowly, her expression unreadable, eyes tired and bright at the same time. I'm not trying to lead you anywhere. I never said you were. Another silence. This one longer. No background noise to distract us this time. Just our breathing, steady but not calm. I think about it, I said finally. Us, whatever this is. I think about it more than I should. She looked down at her hands. Then at me. She didn't say anything. Just looked at me, like she was already mourning something we never even had. The box was heavier than it looked. Old and worn, the kind that had lived through multiple basements. She carried it in herself, cradled tight against her chest like it might fall apart if she held it wrong. Can you hold on to this for a day or two? She asked, setting it on the counter. Stuff from my storage unit. I didn't want to leave it in the car. Yeah, sure, I said, brushing off dust. You moving? She shook her head, distracted. Just sorting. She didn't linger today, just said she'd be back tomorrow. But once she left, I stared at the box like it was humming. I wasn't planning to open it, but I did. Inside papers, old receipts, a cracked snow globe, a college sweatshirt I recognized, my uncle's, a photo album with its spine torn, and a voicemail cassette. Not a USB, not a CD. Cassette. It was labeled in her handwriting. Just one word. Ben. I sat with it in my hand for a long time. When she came back the next day, the first thing she asked was, You opened it, didn't you? I didn't lie. Yeah. She didn't get angry, didn't look away. Instead, she sat down slowly on the stool by the counter and rested her elbows on her knees like her body weighed twice what it had yesterday. Ben was my brother, she said quietly. Died in a crash when he was 24. I was 21. I didn't say anything, just waited. She smiled, but not really. You move like him. That way you lean when you think no one's watching. You laugh with your whole chest, too. It's unnerving sometimes. I nodded once, not sure what to do with that. I kept that voicemail for 15 years, she added. Haven't played it in at least 10. But I can still hear it. Her fingers curled into her palms, knuckles pale. He called to say he'd be late picking me up from the airport. That's it. The stupidest little message. I watched her, still, careful not to blink too fast or speak too soon. I think I started coming around the shop, she continued. Because the silence here, it sounded like him, that pause before someone walks in, that in-between time. He always lived in the in-betweens. I swallowed something sharp in my throat. She reached into the box and took out the cassette, turned it in her hands like it might whisper something if she held it long enough. I don't know what I'm doing here, she said, looking at me now. Really looking. But being around you, it's not just about missing him. It's more than that. And that's what scares me. She took a breath, like she hadn't allowed herself to in years. And for the first time, she looked at me without fear. She didn't knock this time. Just let herself in, slow and quiet, like she wasn't sure the door would open for her again. I was already cleaning up, rags folded, tools back in their drawers. I didn't look up right away. She didn't speak either. We stood in that strange, familiar silence that had become its own kind of language between us. I've been thinking, she said softly, about that day you found the box. I set down the wrench, turned toward her. I don't want to keep finding ways to almost say things, she continued. It's exhausting. I nodded once. Then say it. She smiled at that, just a twitch at the corner of her mouth, like she appreciated being called out gently. I'm not in love with you, she said, the words steady, not cruel. But I feel closer to myself when I'm around you, like I'm not pretending to be someone I used to be. I walked over slowly, not too close. I'm not asking you for anything, I said. Not clarity, not promises. I know, she said. That's why I'm still here. She moved to sit on the crate again, the same one she always claimed without asking. I sat beside her this time, close but not quite touching. The shop was bathed in gold, shadows stretching quietly across the floor like tired arms. I didn't expect this, she said. You, me, this space between. I looked down at her hand resting near her thigh. Unpainted nails. A tiny freckle on her wrist I'd never noticed before. She noticed me noticing and didn't pull away. I think, I said, voice barely more than breath, that I stopped wondering what this is. I just want to be where it is. We sat like that a while. Nothing dramatic, just shared gravity. She shifted her weight slightly, her shoulder brushing mine. Everyone in my life expected me to either disappear or keep performing, she said. But you, I just saw you, I said. She nodded, eyes glassy but not crying. Then finally she reached out. Not for a kiss, not for anything bold. Just placed her hand on mine. Light, grounded, earned. I didn't move. I didn't speak. We just stayed there. Still, the hum of the fridge in the back, the last warmth of daylight on our skin. She leaned her head against my shoulder, slowly, like she'd been carrying something for a long time and didn't know she could put it down. She didn't say she loved me, but she let her guard down, and that was louder than any I love you ever could be. I never told anyone the full story, not because I was ashamed, but because some things only make sense when they're yours alone. Shared too widely, they turn into someone else's version. And this was never meant for that. It's been almost a year. Claire's not in town anymore. She left quietly, like always. No goodbye party, no Instagram post. Just a folded note on the counter of the shop, taped to the drawer where I keep the good pens. It said, "Be where it is." That's all. And somehow, I knew exactly what she meant. I still think about her. Not obsessively. Not even daily anymore. But in quiet moments, when I lock up the shop and the air smells like warm metal and dusk, or when I catch someone looking lost but trying to hide it, I think of her. She taught me something without trying to. That love isn't always about arrival. Sometimes it's about presence. About holding space for another person's breath, grief, confusion, and not needing to label it. When I was younger, I thought love had to be loud to be real. Passion, declarations, movies playing in the rain. But Claire was different. She showed me the power of staying, of listening even when nothing's being said, of offering your hand and not needing to be asked. She made me softer, not weak, just more attuned, aware that people carry invisible stories, and sometimes the most honest thing you can do is to sit beside someone and not ask them to explain. We never kissed. Never crossed whatever line people assumed we did. But it was love in its own way. It was love in glances and shared silences and half-finished sentences. In coffee cups and voicemail tapes. In being seen and not turned away. I still have the scarf. Sometimes I think I should mail it to her, but I don't. Not because I want to hold on to her, but because it reminds me who I became when I was with her. And maybe that's what love really is. Not always the person, but the version of yourself they bring out. The one you didn't know you were allowed to be. Claire gave me that. She didn't say she loved me, but she showed me how to hold something without owning it. How to let it breathe. How to let it end. If you've ever had a connection that didn't fit a category, not quite romance, not quite friendship, but something real, tell me, even if it wasn't meant to last. Sometimes those are the ones that shape us most. Leave a comment. I'll read every one. And maybe, together, we'll stop pretending those kinds of love don't count.